الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and blessings of God be with you. Welcome to the Voice of Islam radio show, the dynamic and spiritually stimulating show about Islam, brought to you by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. We are the oldest Muslim organization in the United States, and our motto is love for all, hatred for none. Welcome back to the ladies show of the Voice of Islam. My name is Ayman, and I'm here with my co-host Shazia. Assalamu alaikum, Shazia.
Walaikum salam, Ayman.
We're excited to spend the next hour talking about Islam's perspective on real and everyday issues.
Yes, and for our listeners who want to learn more about Islam and its teachings through the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, you can go online to our official website, trueislam.com. That is TRUEISLAM.com. You can also check out our Facebook page, Voice of Islam Radio Show. And for those of you who would like to talk to someone and ask questions directly, you can call the number 1-866-Y-ISLAM. That is 1-866-Y-ISLAM. And of course, for any questions or comments, feel free to email us anytime at voiceofislamradioshow@gmail.com.
Yes, we would definitely love to hear from all of our listeners. So with that being said, let's jump into today's topic. Today we'll be speaking about the Islamic concept of Ramadan and fasting.
Yes, and for our listeners at home who may not be familiar with the month of Ramadan, it is the 9th month of the Muslim calendar year, during which strict fasting is observed from sunrise to sunset. And the purpose of the Islamic fast is spiritual development. God tells us in the Holy Quran, in chapter 2, verse 184, O ye who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may become righteous.
Yes, and that verse is so important for Muslims, especially it really influences how we go into the month of Ramadan, especially with our emphasis on prayer. So Shazia, this will mark our second year holding Ramadan inside our homes instead of in our mosque, which is very challenging, and God willing, that will soon change. But how are you and your family preparing for Ramadan this year, since we're only a few weeks away?
Ayman, I feel like Ramadan is a really special time for my family and I, from rising up early for pre-dawn meals to congregational prayers, and just like everyone being on the same schedule, essentially, in so many ways. From first thing in the morning to late at night. And right now, with just a couple of weeks left, I'm trying to get organized, get my groceries done, and God willing, in the coming days, writing to our Caliph, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, who is the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community who resides in UK, just to wish him Ramadan Mubarak and request him to remember us in his prayers. Also, I'm really looking forward to the Quran sermons that our mosque will be holding virtually via Zoom.
Yes, and it does actually help that our community is able to connect virtually still and hold these dars or sermons, as you just mentioned. Even though we are apart, it helps us know that we're all participating and still being able to meet virtually daily to hear these Holy Quran verses and the meanings behind them.
Oh, most definitely. So we have a lot to cover today. So let's get right to it. Our first guest today is Dr. Qudus. She was born in England and now lives in the US. She is a physician and a mother of two. She's involved in clinical research and teaching. Her passion is to reach out to other women in the community, and she has dedicated much of her time to community and interfaith work. And she's currently working on a national level to help spread the true teachings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, Dr. Qudus. It's good to have you back on the show.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be on you, Shazia and Ayman. I feel delighted and very blessed to be on the show with both of you once again.
Wonderful. Jazakallah. Dr. Qudus, to start off, can you explain the significance of Ramadan and why do Muslims fast in this particular month?
So the significance of Ramadan is to attain righteousness as beautifully stated in the Holy Quran in the verse you just recited, Shazia. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Muslim lunar calendar. The month of Ramadan is when the revelation of the Holy Quran and the mission of Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, first began. Fasting in this holy month actually brings into sharp focus the true message of Islam and the Holy Quran for man. It calls to mind the struggles as well as the sacrifices of Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, and his companions for their faith. Where the physical rigors of the fast soften one's heart to the suffering incurred by those in the past as well as those in the current times, fasting also strengthens one's resolve, and it readies a person to make similar sacrifices. Therefore, fasting is a most effective way of religious discipline, which educates not only the mind, but it also enables the body to cope with crisis, anger, hunger, thirst, and much, much more. So all these disciplines are exercised during the month of fasting. Now, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, said, "Start the month after sighting the moon and end it at the next sighting. If you are unable to observe it by reason of the sky being overcast, postpone the fast by a day." He further explains, if you are unable to observe the new moon at the end of Ramadan, observe the fast for the 30th day. So the month of Ramadan could be either 29 days or 30 days, but no longer.
Yes, and this is such a meaningful time for all Muslims, as you just explained the significance and origins of this blessed month. So with that being said, can you explain to our listeners, how does fasting work and what is a typical day like during Ramadan?
Okay, so the Islamic fast is performed from the first to the last day of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. There are 29 or 30 fasts in this month, one each day, which Muslims perform consecutively. That is, there is a fast every day of this month, performed during the hours of the day. A typical day during Ramadan starts with the Hajjad Prayers, which are non-obligatory prayers usually performed a couple of hours prior to dawn. Now, this prayer can be performed throughout the year, but is especially encouraged during Ramadan to reap the blessings of this holy month and to attain the pleasure and closeness of God. This is followed by sehri or breakfast, which for me typically includes fruits, yogurts, oatmeal, and plenty of fluids.
That sounds very healthy. Very nice.
After sehri, the morning or Fajr prayers are offered, followed by recitation of the Holy Quran. And it is encouraged especially to read the Holy Quran extensively during the month of Ramadan, with emphasis on its profound and inspirational teachings. No food or drink is permissible during the fast. Instead, the day of a person who is fasting should be spent in remembrance of God, doing exceptional acts of kindness, and refraining from arguing or disputing with others. The fast ends around dusk, shortly before the Maghrib or evening prayers. By having a glass of water or milk and dates is how one typically breaks the fast. This is then followed by offering the Maghrib prayers and then a lavish meal, a long-awaited meal. So after dinner, the regular Isha prayers as well as Tarawih prayers, which are specific to the month of Ramadan, are offered. And whenever possible, attending the mosque for congregational prayers and breaking the fast with friends, family, and relatives is encouraged.
Beautifully put, Dr. Kadus. From what you have described, we can definitely see the spiritual benefits of Ramadan, especially with attending, with increased prayers and focus on doing good. But are there any physical benefits as well to fasting?
Yes, there are several health benefits resulting from fasting, which are both psychological and physical. So the psychological benefits linked with fasting increase one's willpower, as one must abstain from food and drink that is available to you. There are also a number of physical benefits found in fasting, some of which are regulation of our blood sugar level by reducing insulin resistance in the body, reduced inflammation in our body, and improved blood pressure. So in reduction in the triglyceride and cholesterol levels are also additional benefits of fasting. And then interestingly, some scientific studies have shown that fasting can improve brain function and prevent neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's.
Wow, these are amazing physical benefits. And, it's making me think that there may be so many more that we may not even have discovered yet. And it really does go back to what God says in the Holy Quran in chapter 2, verse 185, and I quote, "And fasting is good for you if you only knew."
Yes, and there's so many benefits for your health. So, Dr. Kudus, is fasting mandatory for all Muslims, or are there exceptions to this rule?
A fundamental principle of Islam is that fasting is obligatory for all adult, healthy Muslims who are not traveling. Those that don't qualify to fast according to these conditions are exempt. And the reason for the exemption is because the purpose of fasting in Ramadan is not to harm one physically, but to train them spiritually. Allah says in the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 186, Allah desires to give you facility, and He desires not hardship for you, and that you may complete the number, and that you may exalt Allah for His having guided you, and that you may be grateful. Therefore, Islam has prohibited those Muslims from fasting who may risk harming their health in doing so. And this also includes students studying for exams, pregnant, and nursing mothers. During medical school, I remember I would try my best to fast during Ramadan. However, when it came to my finals, where I had to study intensely, I could complete my fast. And then later on in the year, as is permissible, I was able to make up the fast that I had missed.
Yes, that is really good that there is flexibility when it comes to fasting. And I think it's an important reminder that Islam is a very practical religion, and God does not mean to put any unjust hardship on anyone who is fasting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there are so many people right now who may be sick and may not be able to fast, which actually reminds me of a quote of the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, who said, and I quote, "The one whose heart looks forward to Ramadan so he could fast will not be deprived of the blessings of fast in the heaven if an ailment prevents him from fasting in Ramadan," unquote. So I thought that was really beautiful, and I wanted to share that. So our next question is that for those who cannot physically fast, can they participate in any other way to attain extra blessings in the month of Ramadan?
Absolutely. God guides us very clearly in the Holy Quran in chapter 2, verse 185. The prescribed fasting is for a fixed number of days, but whoso among you is sick or on a journey shall fast the same number of other days. And for those who are unable to fast, only with great difficulty is an expiation, the feeding of a poor man. And whoso does good of his own accord, it is better for him. And fasting is good for you if you only knew. So the true Islamic teachings do not compel anyone to perform an act of religion which can cause detrimental effects on their physical or emotional well-being. And for those people who are unfit to fast, there are ways to help the poor and needy by financial sacrifice known as fidya, which means atonement. Now, with the blessings of fidya, one can hope to receive the opportunity and strength to fast in the future when they are fit, or when they feel capable of doing so. Fidya, what it does is it inculcates the attribute of sacrifice and instills empathy and consideration towards those who may be less fortunate and without means to afford nutritious meals during the year, as we are, able to.
Yes, and that is beautifully put, how if you're unable to fast, you still should give to the needy, and at this time, just be more empathetic and more humble and be very charitable. Now that we've discussed fasting, can you explain how do Muslims celebrate at the end of Ramadan?
Certainly. So after the conclusion of the month of Ramadan, Muslims are enjoined to show their gratefulness to Allah for having been enabled to witness the blessed month of Ramadan. And this gratefulness is demonstrated through a day of celebration known as Eid al-Fitr. On the day of celebration, Muslims dress up in new and pretty clothes and go to the mosque for special Eid prayers, which are typically performed in addition to the 5 daily prayers. And after the Eid prayers, they greet each other with open arms, saying Eid Mubarak, means happy Eid. Celebrations include decorating your hands with henna, lighting up your homes, and preparing delicious variety of foods. I especially love the dessert selection on Eid Day. And
Me too.
Yes, and I have fond memories of a creamy dessert called sheer khurma, which my mom used to prepare on every Eid. Visiting friends and relatives and distributing gifts, especially to the little children, is customary on Eid Day, as well as going for outings to parks and restaurants, if the weather permits, with family and friends, is all part of Eid entertainment.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end Ramadan with Eid. And it's such a special holiday for Muslims with so many blessings. So Dr. Qaddus, our final question for you today is, what should be the takeaway from Ramadan that we can carry over to the rest of the year?
Shazia, the essence of Ramadan is the feeling of spiritual enrichment and enhancement of our bond with Allah, our Creator. Our spirit of sacrifice, generosity, and empathy towards those less fortunate and needy are all heightened. Ramadan detoxifies our physical as well as our spiritual weaknesses. And as I mentioned earlier, the physical benefits of fasting are tremendous. So we feel revived both physically and spiritually, ready to conquer the challenges of the year ahead.
Yes, this is absolutely right. And this feeling that we strive to carry out throughout the rest of the year, concluding the Ramadan season. So I'd like to take this time to thank you for coming on the show today, Dr. Qaddus, with such great information about Ramadan. And for all of our listeners, I would like to wish you a blessed Ramadan to come. Ameen.
Thank you so much. Blessings to both of you, Shazia and Ayman. It was absolutely wonderful to be on the show again.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So now that we have discussed Ramadan, what it's all about, we're going to look deeper and find out what the whole experience is like with our next guest, Jasmine Hashmi. Jasmine is from Portland, Oregon. She was born into a Mexican-American Catholic family and found Islam Ahmadiyya at the age of 21. She converted back in January 2017 and has been a Muslim for about 4 years or so. She currently works as a financial analyst for Pacific North Bank in Oregon and is happily married and enjoys the beauty of the Pacific Northwest hike on her days off. Assalamu alaikum, Jasmine. Welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam to you both. Peace and blessings of Allah be on you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So, Jasmine, you're a recent convert to Islam. So, as a convert, can you recall your first Ramadan experience?
Yes, of course. So for my first Ramadan, it was back in 2017. I remember being nervous about fasting, especially not being able to drink water. I knew this was going to be a difficult task for me since at the time I was living in Southern California. So as everybody knows, the heat can be pretty extreme during the summer. I was also going to school full time and working full time, along with going to the store and prepping for, Ramadan friendly groceries and fixing my own meals. So I was a bit nervous. I didn't know if I would be able to keep my fast and, not give into temptation, especially when all of the accountability was on me. And my parents were not necessarily, supportive. So, they thought I couldn't do something, this physically challenging for faith. But I learned very quickly that I just had to be strong and know that when Allah is with you, nobody can break you.
Yes, and it's such beautiful the things that you could achieve when it's in the name of God and that God will guide you and protect you to make such things possible for us.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And at the time, my parents were not very happy about my converting to Islam. So I just kept my fasting semi-private. It was just something my parents didn't want to be a part of. So I kind of, just kept to myself. I had to make sure I had my sehri, which is the meal you have before you begin to fast. I had to make sure I had that meal prepped before waking up so I wouldn't, bring any attention to myself or anything like that. So my mornings were pretty much waking up 30 minutes before sunrise, which was probably, 4:30 at the time. And I would have my food ready to go. If it was something that I can keep at room temperature, I would keep it in my room. But if not, I would try my best to kind of like sneak around and not to make, too much noise in the kitchen, so I could eat quickly and drink lots of water before my morning prayer. So I would say my sehri meals were probably the hardest just because it was just me and myself and I. So they did feel, a bit lonely. However, my iftar meals, which is the meal to break your fast, those were mostly done at the mosque. And those were, some of the most memorable experiences I have had.
Oh, yes, that's such a difficult transition, especially for your first Ramadan. But God has granted you the strength to continue and complete that month of Ramadan. It's also nice that you were able to open your fast at the mosque and have that experience, especially for your first year participating in Ramadan. So can you walk us through your first time experience Ramadan at the mosque? For example, the prayers and the atmosphere, the cuisine, all of that from your perspective as a convert?
Yes, of course. So, after work, I had an evening class in one of the neighboring cities from where our mosque was, which was truly, a blessing in disguise because then I would have no excuse to miss opening my fast at the mosque and perform the Ravi prayer, which is an additional prayer, but it can be very peaceful and it's done when you finish eating. So I remember, coming up into the gates of our mosque and seeing the mosque decorated in beautiful color Ramadan lights, and so many people, were there in attendance, ready to break fast as a community and pray together during the blessed month. I was usually able to arrive when the azan, which is the call to prayer, was being recited, and our community would provide water and medjool dates to break our fast, as this was a practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. And then, we would go on to do our sunset prayer, which is called Maghrib prayer. Once we were done with our prayer, our community would provide meals for us every day during Ramadan, which to me was just something, extraordinary because there were so many members in attendance every night, and there would be so many guests that would come during during the weekends for events. And yet somehow, some way, everyone was fed. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah. I just had never experienced this sort of generosity and kindness like this outside of family relations. Being able to eat at the mosque was truly a blessing, and this is why Allah tells us that feeding someone when they have been fasting is an enormous blessing, because those meals, as simple as were, they were probably one of the most tastiest meals I've ever had, and being able to sit with my sisters and break fast with them, especially, some who were also converts like myself, it was just a true delight.
Yes, especially enjoying a meal at the end of the day after everyone's been fasting. And, like, as you mentioned, hospitality is a huge blessing. Just being able to provide for everyone, it just brings us all together as a community. And I could definitely attest that those meals were definitely delicious to enjoy.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, when we would be, done eating, we would go on and do our nightly prayer, which is called Isha prayer. Then afterwards, our Tarawih prayer would continue. And so that would take, Tarawih prayer takes about an additional 45 minutes to an hour. Tarawih prayer is offered every night in congregation at the mosque during Ramadan. And, this prayer, like I said, it's like 45 minutes to an hour, right? So it's pretty long. And you're so tired from fasting the whole day, and you just ate, and so that makes you so sleepy. So at times it was hard to perform this prayer. However, every time it was done, I would leave the mosque with such a peace and tranquility. And the word Tarawih in Arabic means to rest and relax. And so this prayer is seen as a special form of Islamic meditation. And by all means, it truly is. You become almost numb to everything else that went on that day, and you are in such a peaceful trance. It truly feels like medicine to the soul. I would say that the feeling of being, in a constant state of zikr ilahi, which means remembrance of Allah, being in a state of praying together with my community, breaking fast together with my community, this was a true meaning of Ramadan for me. Being with my community, who was always asking how I was feeling and if there was anything that could be done for me. Since most of my sisters knew it was my first Ramadan, this sort of community and praying late, being with this sort of community and praying late into the night, speaking to Allah and feeling His grace on you, knowing that you are strengthening your bond with Him. This is what I experienced for my first Ramadan.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing, Jasmine, and sounds like a very special and memorable first experience with Ramadan. I really like that. So, as you know, fasting is not new to Islam and is actually a practice for many different religions in one form or another. So, Jasmine, before converting to Islam, did you have any experience with fasting? And if so, what were the similarities and differences?
Yes, I did. So I actually fasted during Lent first, and then I fasted during Ramadan. So the way I fasted during Lent was by eating one meal a day and allowing myself to drink water at any time. I would say the similarities between fasting during Lent and fasting during Ramadan is, of course, the service you are doing for Allah. At the end of the day, it's a sacrifice that every individual is doing, and so you're doing what it takes to help strengthen and bond your relationship with Allah. However, some of the differences I noticed was the lack of information and instruction for fasting for Lent. So every household tends to celebrate Lent differently, and they have different ways of fasting, and or abstaining from something. So trying to fast the, quote unquote proper way can be a bit different, a bit hard to do, since there's no one way of really knowing how to do it. Versus in Islam, Allah has provided us with exact instructions, from knowing how to measure when there is light in the sky, and so your fast is to begin, to knowing when to break your fast, to knowing how to look for the new moon, the new moon that initiates and completes, the month of Ramadan. So
Right.
there's very specific instructions to help us know what is expected of us as Muslims and as an ummah, as a community. Which, this kind of leads to my second difference, which is the communal aspect of it. The communal aspect is not as apparent in Catholicism as I would say it is in Islam. The lack of community is not only felt in the community, in the religious community, but also in individual homes. So for my case, everyone in my family fasted different. So like I said, I would eat one meal a day. My mother would abstain from chocolate. My sister, would abstain from something like potato chips and so on. So it was a bit different because there wasn't ever a feeling like there was that, like we were coming together as one family, as one community to properly fast and worship Allah during Lent. So.
Yes, fasting in Islam is definitely unique in the way that we do observe our daily prayer fast, and from not consuming water or food until sunset to eating dinner as a community. So lastly, how do you plan to spend your Ramadan and Eid this year?
Yeah, so I think, this year, my Ramadan and Eid will probably be like last year's Ramadan and Eid. Of course, very COVID-friendly kind of celebration. My husband and I are planning to do a road trip and head down to California to stay at my in-laws' house. My younger brother-in-law will be fasting with us as well. And so I'm looking forward to all of the wonderful dishes my mother-in-law cooks for us to break our fast, and just eating together as a family, praying together as a family, celebrating Eid together as a family. I'm really looking forward to that. I think because due to COVID, unfortunately, the mosque will probably still be closed, so it will be a very family concentrated Ramadan. However, the feeling of community will still be apparent in our communal morning and evening meals, along with our congregational prayers. And the goal for Ramadan is about, hitting that reset button in order to reestablish and nurture our relationship with Allah. So at the end of the day, we are truly the only ones that end up winning by, shedding our old bad habits and coming into our new skin. So, I pray that this is accomplished by us all this year, God willing.
God willing. Yes, that's such a beautiful sentiment to remember and to reset and continue that year with this mindset. And I do want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your perspective on Ramadan. May you have a blessed Ramadan to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you both. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you for coming.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak to you to come.
It is really so enlightening to see the basic principles of Ramadan, as Dr. Quddus has shared, to the unique and practical experiences that Jasmine has brought to our show. This month is really a period of great and positive change. Now that we're going to bring the show closer to home, our final guest today is Sadka Malik. After receiving her graduate degree, Sadka has worked in the healthcare management and is currently the Director of Operations of the OC Skin Institute in Southern California. And since 2008, she has served in various leadership roles for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and is currently the local president of the Women's Auxiliary based out of the Batul Hamid Mosque in Chino. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show, Sadka.
Assalamu alaikum, Sadka.
Assalamu alaikum, both Eamon and Shazia. Hope you guys are well.
We are. Thank you for coming on the show today. So,
thank you for having me.
Of course. So Sadka, as you know, we just had beautiful descriptions and explanations of Ramadan thus far. So looking back, can you tell us what Ramadan was like at the Batul Hamid Mosque before the pandemic?
Oh yes, such beautiful memories. Ramadan is the holy month of fasting and spiritual growth. So we start preparing for Ramadan several weeks before the beginning. God willing, we were able to host iftar, which is the break of fast, daily at the mosque pre-2020, so pre-COVID. And as you know, we start the Ramadan with the Tarawih prayers the night before the first day of fasting. So men, women, and children get together for the congregational prayers at the mosque at that time. So every night before iftar, after that, a group of about 300 to 500 members come to the mosque around Asr time, which is the midday prayer, to offer their prayers and listen to the sermon, which is recitation of the Holy Quran and its commentary. And as you know, men and women are segregated in the mosque. So about 10 to 12 girls serve dates and water to break the fast. And then we have prayers offered, After the dinner is served in our courtyard with beautiful ambience, cafe lights, simple dinner, but beautiful ambience because, you're in your spiritual mode. That is when everyone gets to greet and mingle and quickly get back to prayers, and that's when we do our Isha and Tarawih prayers, which are 45 minutes to an hour long, as Jasmine mentioned earlier.
Right.
Our focus is prayers always. But, all other things go along with it.
These are such beautiful memories. And, Amin and I have also had the privilege of experiencing firsthand. So you really brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah,
I could picture it now.
you both are very good volunteers, by the way, at the mosque. I know that.
Thank you. Coming from the president. Can you also talk about what was your role as Women Auxiliaries president in organizing various events and activities at the mosque?
So as a women's auxiliary president, management of everything on the ladies' side, like I mentioned before, is segregated. So providing assistance to the men's side while with organization and setup for all the events that are held. Also day-to-day oversight of members' needs, So as you know, our mosque doors were open for all guests from various faiths at any time. And especially with the offering of the iftar on daily basis, we loved to have our mosque neighbors over to break bread at the break of fast, which is after sunset. So as our guests arrive at their convenience, we ensure that they are our priority. So we do believe that guests are God sent. And that is the true meaning of Ramadan, to sacrifice our worldly and physical desires to give to others. So it doesn't matter how hungry you are, you take care of them first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that mention of having an open door policy, and God willing, we could get back to that soon. I know one of the things you organized annually was the Interfaith Dinners, where the mosque would open up its doors to guests of different religions. Why do you think that's so important, and what goes into organizing such an event?
Well, we really believe and truly believe that our mosques are their worship place. We have open door policy, as mentioned before, and we invite fellow Americans to our mosque for dinner and conversations. We share the true meaning of Islam, which is peace. Members, from various faiths will come together to build a better understanding and connection through these events. And that's what we want to see. We want to see a great connection and network right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think everyone really appreciates that. I remember like a lot of guests who would come over, they would love to tour the mosque and just see how we prayed and everything. And there was a lot of bonding that happened, and we made friendships, lasting friendships that came out of those interfaith events. So it's really an important part of who we are, and just to reach out to everyone and have that bond with everyone.
Yes.
So these are such amazing events, and unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we won't be able to hold these at the mosque this year. Can you explain how has the community adapted during the pandemic, and are there any special activities going on this year?
Yes. Even as the COVID-19 pandemic, it confounds communities and has caused suffering around the world. Prayer it always remains with us, right? So we do as the world around us is doing. We go to the digital version of the ceremonial dinners. So we have speakers from various faiths join us in celebrating Ramadan and they explain how every religion has prescribed the fasting in one way or another. So in reality, we want to focus on our similarities through these events and the connection we find with the strong belief in God and our faiths.
That's fantastic. And for our listeners who may be interested in joining an interfaith Ramadan event via Zoom, you can email us at voiceofislamradioshow@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you with all the details. So our next question for you is, will the Women's Exil organization be involved in any special Ramadan activities this year?
Yes, indeed. A big part of Ramadan is a focus on increased volunteering and act of charity, which Dr. Kudus had mentioned in her interview earlier, which can be done virtually too. So we hold webinars and telethons to collect funds for one of our Humanity First events that we do. So it's one of our nonprofit organization which aids all underserved countries with programs such as Water for Life, Gift of Sight, Global Health, Knowledge for Life, Food Security, and Disaster Relief. So such as providing meals during COVID-19 pandemic to the poverty-stricken areas, So last year, we also donated masks to local shelters and collectively sent thousands out to Humanity First to distribute worldwide. In fact, we had one of our members who made them for City of Riverside. It was her husband's workplace, so she made it for them.
Very
so it was
nice.
Really, it was a sweet gesture, which was appreciated,
And much needed.
Exactly. And being mindful of COVID, it's even more vital that we're aware of people being out there who are struggling a lot more than before, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to take this time. We need to take this time and effort to continue to help those that are less fortunate, and also being in healthcare, I'm blessed to be vaccinated, and several people are, and we will use good judgment while in public. So we will be focusing on our food drives, which we set up near a few of the neighboring city civic center parks. So we will go feed and provide hygiene products to homeless at the heart of LA, over by the Skid Row area. So again, our goal is always to build those bridges, break barriers, and get to know our local surroundings face to face.
That is great. And it looks like the Women's Auxiliary will just be busy with so many charitable initiatives.
Inshallah, God willing, yes.
God willing. And that actually reminds me of the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be on him, who was extremely charitable throughout the year. But it is related that during Ramadan, that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be on him, his own concern for and the care for the poor and the needy and the sick and the orphan was intensified so much that his charity knew no limit.
Yes.
And it is important for us to remember and participate in these charitable events. We only experience these hunger pains for a month, while others don't, they're unsure how long it will last. And it also brings a sense of community, because no matter if you're the richest Muslim or the poorest Muslim, everyone is feeling the same hunger pains. But as we know, this also applies for non-Muslims in the charity work that we're doing, and that's exactly why it's our duty to help. And last week, for those of you who've missed the episode, we actually spoke to 2 different charities trying to accomplish just that. So for those of you who want to go back and listen to our show from last week and any other shows, please check out our YouTube channel at Voice of Islam Chino Mosque. So that will lead us to our last question for you today. So personally, what is your typical day like in Ramadan, and what are you most looking forward to?
Very good question. So, because of the pandemic, my home becomes my mosque, my prayer area. So I get a little more serious in spending time in remembrance of God, trying to learn the ways of improving my own spirituality, my knowledge and understanding of God, as well as other human beings that are suffering. So everyone has their own typical individual way. I believe the relationship is between you and God, right? But when you are fasting and not drinking or eating, you really come to understand those who are less fortunate than us and what they're feeling or what they feel. So I try to rank up the status of my spirituality and keep on practicing and perfecting those lessons I learn one Ramadan till next Ramadan and repeat the cycle.
Yes, God willing. And that is exactly true, like how you were mentioning, we do feel, and as Dr. Kudus was mentioning, you do feel empathy towards other, and that's something that we should keep going all year round.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
true. Very true. So it's truly inspiring, and I love how you said that your home becomes your mosque. It is very comforting to know that God is everywhere and with us at all times, and we can connect with God anywhere. So I would like to thank you, Satka. But before I do you have any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to let us know?
No, thank you very much. I think I've said enough. And, Ramadan Mubarak. I know we're 2 weeks and some days short.
Yes, we're almost there. I would like to thank you so much for coming on the show, Satka. We really appreciate your insight, and may you and your family have a blessed Ramadan to come.
Jazakallah. And you as well. And Amen, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jazakallah, and assalamu alaikum.
So I would like to thank all of our guests today. You really gave us some valuable information to take away. Shazia, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners as we come to the end of today's show?
Yes, I think we really got a lot of good takeaway from today's show, and especially, the fact that it's not just about abstaining from food and drink, but also we have to look deep inside of us and have that focus and that connection with God and spirituality, and just help everyone around us. And there's one thing that really stick with me is something that Jasmine said, and I really would like to read that again, because I really, as she was saying it, it just really hit home. She said that the goal for Ramadan is about hitting the restart button in order to reestablish and nurture a relationship with Allah. At the end of the day, we are the only ones that end up winning by shedding our old habits and coming into our new skin. So I really like that, and I think I'm going to hold on to that practice. Any other final thoughts, Eamon, for Ramadan or anything else? What are you looking forward to this year?
I am really looking forward to, first of all, that it is right around the corner. Everyone just gets this sense of excitement before it even starts yet. So that's why we definitely wanted to speak about it today. But also just preparing and waking up for Fajr and doing these prayers, doing our additional prayers, feeling that peace and tranquility. And I really do believe that my prayers do get answered during Ramadan. It's such a blessed month, and you're spending so much time and speaking to God and while doing your prayers and in meditation, that everything sorts itself out, and it's such a blessed time. And this is one of the most blessed months. So I am looking forward to that, definitely excited for that. And then, of course, every time you open fast, you're just a little bit excited to eat whatever you want to eat. So whether it be pizza or if you want to open your fast with frozen yogurt, that's fine too. So I'm in for that.
You're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you mentioned that that your prayers get answered. And honestly, like with the community work that I'm anything that I'm involved in, I feel like in Ramadan, things just take a new meaning, and everything becomes easier in a way. And I feel like there's a lot of help from God, and just everything has a very special meaning, and there's a spiritual energy that takes over. There may be physical weakness at times, but there's a spiritual energy and just that takes over a person, and you just want to do more and just get more involved.
It's in the air.
Yeah, it's in the air, definitely.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, we've learned so much today, and I hope our listeners have learned so much today. I mean, not only is fasting about not eating food or consuming water, it's about being slow to anger, not getting angry, and being empathetic towards others, and giving to charity and being charitable and carrying on this feeling of goodness throughout the whole year, it does really bring everything to perspective, and you really do turn to prayer during this time.
Very, very true. And another thing that I forgot to mention earlier was that we're very blessed that we have, as Ahmadi Muslims belonging to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we do have a caliph, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the one who resides in UK. He's the worldwide head, and he comes to our living rooms every Friday. He has Friday sermons and he gives lectures, and he that's something that our listeners, if they'd like to check it out, we do have a Muslim television channel, and it's mta.tv. They can check it out anytime they like, and there's a lot of spiritual and events and programs on it that they can listen to. And especially in Ramadan, there will be a lot more information about Ramadan and a lot of exciting and spiritually stimulating shows. So if any listeners would like to continue the conversation and learn more about Ramadan, because I feel like we just scratched the surface today. So
I know there's so much to cover in such little time.
Exactly. So they can check out mta.tv, and there's also a worldwide website, which is alislam.org. So it's www.alislam.org. And on that, you will find a lot more information about Ramadan and anything else, basically. So that would be another website to check out if any of our listeners would love to understand Islam and Ramadan further.
Oh, yes, most definitely. So I do want to take the time to thank our guest today again, and of course our listeners at home. So please make sure to check out our Facebook page, The Voice of Islam Radio Show, and email us at thevoiceofislamradioshow@gmail.com. You could also check out our YouTube videos of past discussions at The Voice of Islam Chino Mosque. And that email is also good for that iftar dinner via Zoom that we hope you do join us for.
Yes, definitely. For the interfaith event, you would enjoy it.
So I would like to thank everyone for listening. That ends our time here today. May the peace and blessing of God be on you.
Amen. Assalamu alaikum.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.